Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another New Year's Indie Book Blitz panel. We are here for one of my favorite panels, just in general, every year, the Fairytale and Mythological Retelling Panel. Not because it's necessarily one that I write, even though I'm starting to delve into it, but because this panel always has the most inventive twists on how you can write and do stories. And we have 5 fresh new faces for 2023 to 2024. We've got Edith on, we have Rachel on, we have PL on, we've got Courtney on, and we have Madam Crystal Butterfly on. Welcome to the Blitz. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Good. Great.
We're great. Thank you.
Awesome. So glad you're here. So glad that we have people tuning in on Twitter and on YouTube. If you want to ask questions to any of the panelists about their books, about their whatever they do, because we've got Madam Crystal Butterfly and PL who review books, who have YouTube channels, Courtney who's in book builders and everything, drop them in the chat. We can pull them over and answer them. That's why we're doing it live. And all of their links are in the description box. I'll just get that out of the way right now so that while you're listening to them and you pick up on some of these books, you can just scroll down, click, add it to your crumbling TBR list. But yeah, why don't you guys start us off? Edith, you want to start us off and we can go around, just introduce yourself and what kind of books you write. Are they fairy tale retellings, mythological retellings?
Yep. So hi, I'm Edith Policki. I actually write a complete span of sci-fi fantasy books, but almost all my books have some element of mythology in them. The series that kind of comes to mind first is my Immortal Beings series, which is kind of based on, it's kind of Pan-Asian mythology. My father was in Japan for a year when he was a child, and I have an aunt that lives there. So I grew up learning a lot of Japanese mythology. And now I happen to have both a Chinese brother-in-law from Hong Kong and a Chinese sister-in-law from the mainland. I've gotten addicted to Chinese dramas. And so when I started writing this book, I kind of was like, oh, I'm writing whatever I want. I don't even know if anyone's going to read it. I might as well take what I want. So like the first book has a sun emperor, which references the sun god Amaterasu from Japan, but also like the Jade Emperor from Chinese mythology. And then the other books, which have less, but a little bit, Minerva, if you're interested in Roman mythology, take on Greek. It's a dystopian, but all the characters, there's a lot of plays on Roman mythology, I guess they talk about it. And then a magical imperative, the magic system is based on the red string of fate. It takes place, it's an urban fantasy taking place in Japan, but there's a red string of fate.
Nice. I love the new covers, by the way, because I think you still had the old covers the last time
I
chatted with you. Yeah, it's so good to have you and love that influence because we see a lot of mythological of like Greek mythology. So it's nice to see some Asian mythology brought in too. Yeah. Rachel, welcome. So glad to have you on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your books?
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I do have to apologize in advance. I'm recovering from a head cold, so I may sound a little extra nasally today. But
thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem. I'm great. It's just, you know how that lingers sometimes. So I kind of have a variety similar to Edith. I don't quite go as far as sci-fi. I wish, but so right now my current series is the Ivy and Bone series, and that's originally based off Hades and Persephone, but each book kind of progresses into something different. The third book is coming out March 9th. And so Ivy and Bone, the first one, focuses on Hades and Persephone, but then we kind of shift gears to different sisters. So it's a trio of sisters, and I kind of dabble in dark witchy arts in there too. And so it's more of a loosely based Hades and Persephone retelling. I advertise it as a Hades and Persephone retelling with a twist. So she's a witch, and she summons him to the mortal realm. So it's kind of a little bit backwards as opposed to him luring her to the underworld. So she summons him to bring back her sister from the dead, and they end up bound together. And it's a very great stuck together trope. And then book 2, we're in the underworld, and book 3, we're in Elysium. And that one explores more of Pandora. So I kind of throw in some Greek mythology references. I do dabble in the Roman side of things too. But a lot of it kind of veers off the beaten path, because that's one of the great things about retellings is that you can kind of add your own twist to it, and otherwise they would all be the same. So I do love that. That's kind of how we can get going there. Also, I'm in a multi-author series project called Enemies Ever After. Each of us does a different fairy tale. And they're all enemies to lovers. There's a bit of spice in them too, and those are all releasing spring to summer of next year. And so the one I'm doing for that one is Snow White. It's called Carved in Ice and Glass. I'm really excited about that one. It's it's my first fairy tale retelling, and it's also my first fae romance, and so really excited to dive into those. We're doing a Kickstarter with it, and they're called flip-flop hardcovers. So we've got Beauty and the Beast on one side, Peter Pan on the other. Yeah, so you kind of combine both into one, which is really cool.
Take my monies.
I know, right? I'm like, we get some for us, right? Right. So,
oh, Courtney, we need that in a book box.
Yes.
Yes. So that's currently what my selection of books is right now.
Wow. Love that. I love that so much. I'm a sucker for a beautiful cover on a book.
Yes, me too.
Yes. So PL, welcome. You're so busy reading and reviewing and everything. I don't know how you managed to pull it all together, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the books you actually write? It's exciting.
Okay, thank you. And thanks so much for having me and all this, Katherine. It's amazing. You're on a marathon here. I don't know how you do it. You've been going all the last few days just back to back with all these panels. So amazing. Kudos to you. And thanks so much for having us. Yeah, I'm P.L. Stewart. I'm the author of the Drowned Kingdom Saga. 3 books currently out right now in this series. The first one being A Drowned Kingdom. That's the first book in the series. I'm sorry, my camera's probably not holding up very well, but that's book 1. The second book is The Last of the Atalanteans. That is book 2. And the third book currently out is Lord and King. That is the third book. And the fourth book is due out in the spring, and that is called A Lion's Pride. So in terms of historical retelling, well, part of the premise of my series called the Drowned Kingdom Saga is based on my version of Plato's tale of the lost realm of Atlantis. Essentially, the gist is what would happen if after Atlantis sunk, no spoilers because obviously it sinks, if there were survivors, where the survivors go, what would they do? So it's the series is centered around a main character named Arthur. He's very flawed. He's got a lot of issues. He's bigoted, he's racist, he's homophobic, he's a colonialist. He is intolerant of other religions, but he's the last surviving leader of what's left of the Atalanteans, and he manages to escape and bring his people to this new continent. And he wants to. Atlantis was this colonial superpower in my version, which is similar to Plato's tale, and they impose their will on other nations, and they subjugate these nations and force their religion on them, and they're monotheistic, and they force their religion on these other nations. But he wants to do the same thing in this new continent. People there aren't having it. So, it's a lot of it is about his attempt to rise to power. Can he make alliances? Will the warlords and mages and the people there who worship more elemental magic and multiple deities, can he find anyone that'll take his side? What will happen? So that's what the series is all about. So.
Yeah. Wow. This is a lot to keep up with and a lot to tackle too at the same time.
Yeah, it's a 7-book series. So we get a chance to follow the character through essentially a life and all the things that he encounters, and hopefully he'll undergo some sort of change, evolution in his character, and he won't stay entrenched in his views, or he might. So you get to figure that out over the course of 7 books. So halfway done now. The 4th book will be coming out this spring. So that's kind of on the way. So yeah, that's exciting for me. So thank you.
Wow. So we're going to have to get back to the secret of how in the world you do all that you do, and research and do all that stuff, and then still read and review and all of that. That's a lot. Courtney, you're somebody else who is super busy managing book builders and collecting cool stuff and writing your own books.
Yeah, I do a lot of fantasy and sci-fi as far as the books and stories that I write. I work with a lot of fantasy and sci-fi authors with my company, Fiction Atlas Press. We do author builders. I do formatting, editing, website building. So I do a lot of things with fantasy and sci-fi. But my favorite things to read and to write are fairy tale retellings, and especially if I can weave some mythology in there too. I've got a Sleeping Beauty retelling coming up. It's going to be a duology. I'm actually doing a whole series of duologies with different fairy tales and different, I guess, some myth and legend persuasions in there, kind of mixed in between. I've got my Sleeping Beauty one in the Kingdom of Dreams is coming out next June, and hopefully the sequel will be out that fall. I've also got a Little Mermaid retelling that I started off in one of my anthologies, and it has some Greek and Roman stuff in there. It's about a mermaid who falls in love with a sailor. The sailor dies, and she's going to the underworld, to find him. Along the way, she gets mixed up with someone who is not who they appear to be, and he's to help her, and there's a big love triangle. I put a little romance in there with all of my retellings. It's good. I think it's going to be fun. I've got a Peter Pan retelling coming up. There's a lot of favorite. I have like a million editions of it, and so I can't wait to get to that one, but I have to get these other ones done first. But I'm really terrible about talking about myself, so I'm I love fangirling over other stuff.
It's hard. It's hard to talk about your own books. Yes, absolutely. And Courtney spends so much time promoting other people's stuff too, very similar to PL, just really lifting the community in general. So it's a pleasure to have everybody on. And Madam Crystal Butterfly, talking about supporting this community, your YouTube channel has blown up this year, and you do all those indie reviews, and you're still writing your own stuff.
Yep, I am taking on too much. It's proof I'm a writer because clearly I'm crazy. Yeah, but I'm also expanding my reviews to TikTok as well.
Oh, wow. How has that transition been for you from TikTok, like from YouTube to TikTok?
It'd be fine if TikTok's rules weren't weird. It's like certain things I get away with on YouTube, suddenly TikTok's telling me, oh, you can't do that. And I'm thinking, well, YouTube let me do it. So I gotta figure that out.
Yes. And while you're telling us about your favorite kind of books, I'm actually going to drop your YouTube channel because Madam Crystal Butterfly hit 5,000 subscribers this year, which is that's huge. The service you're giving indie authors by sharing with that many readers is
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I know as authors, our job is hard. So if I can help everybody grow while I'm trying to grow, it's a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your fairy tale retellings. 2 years ago, you got me writing about a frog. And so what have you been writing
I really
this year?
dare you to do more things. Yeah, but I have the first 2 entries to my Butterfly Tales series, which is my fairy tale retelling series, Curse of Frog Prince Part 1 and Part 2, which is about a princess named Akenyi. She's in a fictional African country. Her country has been taken over by a tyrant who killed her father. And now she has to marry him. Otherwise, he'll savagely slaughter her people. So, that's a real good match. The guy who killed your dad is plotting to kill all your friends. But yeah, she obviously is trying to find a way out. And she has no idea. How is she going to get out of this? Her only family is her younger brother. He was injured and they're trying to start something, but it's not looking good for them getting their own rebellion to take their country back. So one day when she's at her lowest, she's playing around with a family heirloom It runs away on her. If you want to know why it ran away, then read the book. But it ran away on her. She chased after it. And when she gets it back, she meets a talking frog and proceeds to run away because last time we checked, frogs don't talk. It catches up to her and says, hey, I see you have a tyrant problem. I'll help you in exchange for doing something for me. My other book, I don't have a copy right now because that's the one I was telling you guys earlier. I'm waiting on Amazon to deliver to me. Violet Evergreen and the Seeds of Rebellion. It's about a young witch. It's in a world where everybody has magic powers. You see all kinds of mythological and fairy tale creatures in a modern setting. And she, when she was a child, her cruel relatives were able to get custody of her, even though nicer relatives want to take custody, and nicer relatives were better off than the mean ones. But her cruel relatives get custody over her. And now that she's entered into young adulthood, these people have been oppressing her. They've been bullying her. They've been stifling her. They've been treating her all kinds of ways. Her whole life, they're trying to force her to get married and everything else. And she's sick of it. She doesn't want to deal with their nonsense anymore. And she's trying to fight back. In addition to, these people have custody over because her parents were killed. Why were her parents killed? So she's trying to solve the mystery of what happened to her parents, in addition to fighting for her own freedom and taking charge of her own life. The last book I will tell you guys about is my most recent published, Realms the Hidden Fairy. This is about a young woman named Willow. She was raised by her aunt after her parents went missing. Her aunt tries to tell her what happened to her parents, but every time she does, it's like this crippling fear takes over her aunt to the point where she can't even speak. And so Willow's, all her life, she's been frustrated because her aunt seems to want to tell her what happened to her parents. But every time she tries, it's like this fear takes her over. So Willow is sick and tired of being left in the dark. And she's looking for clues to see where to find what happened to her parents. And one night she's in a park. She's taking a little breather because she's feeling overwhelmed. And she's thinking, I'll figure this out. Just take it one step at a time. When suddenly she hears a noise. And, she looks to see what that noise is. And my goodness, what you see, a fairy being savagely attacked by a troll trying to kill it. And so she doesn't listen to her instincts and call 911 because she goes to help the fairy and they are able to escape. But this fairy and this troll situation might have something to do with some of the secrets she's trying to find out when it comes to the mystery of her parents. If you want to know what all that is, like I said, buy the book. Actually, while you're here, buy a book from every author on this panel.
Yes, I've got everybody's links in the description box too. If I've forgotten to mention that, I'm always so bad to remind people, go to the description box, follow the authors. But yeah, this is so cool to have such a wide variety of people on the panel. So we're going to talk a second about what is a fairy tale / mythological retelling versus fantasy, mythological, and fairy tale inspired, and why your book fits in the retelling part as opposed to just the inspired part.
Well, mine fits in the inspired part, not really the retelling part. But, I guess the reason why is it is not any strict mythology. But especially if you're familiar with the mythologies, you will find many breadcrumbs. There's many mythological creatures from the different mythologies. But the stories are just totally unique and the magic systems are original. But so I think the story is what makes it either a retelling or inspiration. And I kind of ditched the story part.
But the question then lies is how much of the story do you have to keep the same, right? Is it sort of up for debate, author to author? Or is it more of, okay, we know this is Cinderella because she's going to be in a bad situation. She's going to get a magical moment. She's going to go to a ball. She's going to end up saved from that moment. Or is it more loose than that? Maybe she's not leaving a bad situation, but she can't do what she's dreaming of doing, and then she goes to the ball. And like, I think that's always been the part that's been so hard for me, is looking at the retellings and the reimaginings. Like, how much of the original do you really have to keep in there?
Right. Do you get to change the ending? Do you get to surprise readers? Yeah.
Like, hey, Cinderella retelling, except Cinderella says no to the prince who comes after
right.
her after this one dance.
That sounds quite fun. In fact, I read one of those when I was a kid, and it was really good.
I'm curious, PL, you've read so many of these. What your thought process is on it?
Well, I know for my book, again, just like Edith, mine is more inspired than actual, sticking true to and again, Atlantis is an allegory. A lot of people don't believe that it exists, and a lot of people do. There's no empirical data to say yes, it did exist, but I do stay true to the essence of the tale. Again, I said this colonial superpower that they fell out of favor supposedly with the deities, and they sunk, and that is probably, if I can say how much of my tale reflects that. Yeah, for the most part, that's the gist of it. The rest is very much fictional, all made up. And there's a few more details I won't get into that are perhaps spoilers that are more closely a mirror the Atlantis myth. But I think though it's a lot more fun. I don't know how the rest of the panel feels. It's a lot more fun to really play with these inspired or close retelling. Obviously, you're going to add things in there that are not strictly on point. Hey, yeah, Stuart, strictly on point with the legend. You have to have some creative license, and you want the freedom and the latitude to write what you want, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I think that I've read some fantastic, like really strict retellings, historical fantasy. Madeline Miller comes to mind. Circe, and that's fantastic stuff. That's now I'm desperately. I mean, obviously, I now these things are terrible for the TBR. Now I'm going to add all your books to the TBR. I'm a big fan of Edith's work. I already read one of her books. RL sounds amazing because that's like right up my alley. So yeah, but anyways, I love the retellings, but I like books that they stray a bit further afield from what it's originally intended. So. That's my preference.
Absolutely. And so, Rachel, how about yours as far as that inspired retelling?
Well, it's interesting because it really depends on where that line is drawn, because, I see a lot of, I guess, like gender swapped or gender flipped retellings where, it's Cinderella, but instead he's the one who goes to the ball dressed up to, meet the princess and that kind of thing. So does that still count? It's really interesting how a lot of that can be fudged. And like PL, I really do like when people take liberties with it, because again, we would just have the same story over and over again if people followed it really strictly. And so I like that. As writers, we get to kind of expand on that and use it as more like inspiration, like we were talking about. Now with Ivy and Bone, that is probably more of an inspired by. And I feel like a lot of mythology in that instance, you take certain liberties because some mythology just sucks. Like, I mean, I say that in the nicest way possible, but like, especially if you go through Greek mythology, you've got
too much incest.
Yeah, you got the incest, you got the murder, you got it's like murdering your own children. Like, it's icky. I don't like it. There's a lot in there that I don't particularly like to throw in my story. But I do like, allusions or Easter eggs or things for people who do know those myths and those, deities and stories and legends that people grew up with. And so with Ivy and Bone, I have a lot of the basic things that people will recognize. You've got the underworld. I do have pomegranate seeds. And I have it swapped. So she lures him with a spell and that encompasses the power of the pomegranate seed and binds him to her. So they have to work together. So he has to work with her. He's not allowed to kill her right away or anything. He, he's the god of the dead. He's a morally gray guy. So he would just kill her without a thought because she did this to him, but she works that into the spell where he can't. And so, yeah, they work together, and, there's obviously a lot of liberties taken. I really liked the idea of a Persephone who was fierce and powerful, because I feel like a lot of retellings show her as more on the feeble side, and so I kind of wanted to switch that up a bit too. Um, Now with fairy tales, I feel like there's a lot more people can work with, a lot more elements that are recognizable. And so with my Snow White retelling, I kind of took a lot of inspiration from the renegade Snow White, like from Once Upon a Time. So she's cast out, she kind of becomes a rebel, to take her throne back. And so that's the Snow White that I've toyed with, because the whole concept of, oh, I hate her because she's more beautiful than me, felt a little feeble to me. And so I kind of had to strengthen those motives a little bit. And so I have the Snow White, I have the magic mirror, I have the poisoned apple. Not necessarily dwarves. In this case, they are the seven human nobles in the different realms that she's working with as part of the rebellion. So yeah, you have those concepts too, which are great because people identify those more readily, mostly, thanks to popular movies out there that help. But I think with fairy tales, you're more likely to see like a Cinderella retelling as part of the subtitle, even if it's just a loose inspiration, just because it's so easily recognizable as opposed to mythology, which might take a little digging for people to be able to recognize those stories.
Yeah. I love that your Hades and Persephone story, it makes me think of like Hades and Persephone meets Inuyasha.
Oh, yeah.
I can just imagine her being like, oh, somebody sit down.
Oh, that takes me back. It's been a while.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So we've got a couple like looser, we've got more of a standard. Here's the elements, like you said, and how well known they are. Madam, how about you? How about your books? I know that some of yours, like with the frog, I don't want to spoil anything though. It has a lot of those elements that were in the classic, but sort of fixed in some ways.
Yeah, I would say to a degree it's more inspired because I did take some elements from the classic fairy tales, but I did mostly use them to tell my own story and veered away from them a bit, but they still play a big role. So, like when she meets the talking frog at the lake in the original story, you have the princess meeting the frog at the lake, but instead of thinking she could trick him, this one's saying, okay, what kind of deal can I make to benefit me? Because this princess understands the art of deal making better than the original princess, who was a little spoiled. And I don't get the original story because the princess was crying, losing her ball. And I'm thinking, you're a princess, you're rich. Just you can get another golden ball easily. Anyway, not ranting about that. But yeah, this one I feel is more inspired because I do introduce other fairy tale elements from different fairy tale stories, but I'm still mostly writing my own thing about the war in this continent, and I'm trying to just use them more as a baseline to tell an entirely different story with those themes. Although I do have a story coming out called I Hate Apples that I'm working on, which is closer to, I would say, the original. I mean, the hardcore originals, the ones with the really messed up stories. It's closer to the original fairy tales because, okay, long story short, a bunch of grown people on YouTube told me to watch a children's cartoon called Ever After High, and I had nothing better to do, so I was like, okay. So I watched it, and it gave me an idea of where the kids in the cartoon are trying to figure things out and tell their own stories. I was thinking, what if I wrote my own story where it's a world between the pages and these characters have been made to reenact the original fairy tales, which are disturbing. And you have the evil queen. She's supposed to be evil, cruel, poison Snow White with the apple. But she doesn't want to do that. And because she doesn't want to do that, because she and Snow are very close, she doesn't want to do that. She's thinking to herself, well, I don't want to do this. And it's a whole story of her hardcore rebelling against what she's being told to do. And it does get a lot into, I would say, old African fables. Characters like Anansi will show up to cause trouble. In addition, there will be a war between the Greek gods and the Norse gods. I'm not going to tell y'all too much. You'll get little hints on my YouTube channel, but Yeah, that story I feel is more of a fairy tale retelling because it will skirt closer to the original stories. But Curse of the Frog Prince I feel is more inspired because it doesn't skirt as hard towards the stories, but it still uses a lot from them.
Awesome. And Courtney, how about your books?
I would say mine are, again, more inspired than a direct retelling. I like to change, especially fairy tales. A lot of times women are not empowered in them, especially the older fairy tales. Women are the damsel in distress. So like in my Sleeping Beauty retelling, she is the one that goes up to fight against the evil fairy instead of, the prince doing it. The prince has his own motivations and things that he does in the story. So we're not stripping anything away from him. He's going there to, he's trying to find her, to find a way to, I don't want to say decurse. He's got a curse on his kingdom, and he's trying to find the one who can help him break this curse. So it's kind of like a duality there. So he needs her for reasons, she needs him for reasons. They may find love. There's another character, they might find love. I like to humanize the villains sometimes too, because a lot of times in fairy tales, villains are very one-sided, one-dimensional. So having them have actual motivations for the reasons that they are doing these things makes it more exciting for me. I'm trying to think of other examples, but I think most of mine are just taking the core elements of the story, things that you recognize. So this is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, this is a Peter Pan retelling, or Rapunzel or whatever. You know that it is a retelling, but you're excited to figure out how it's going to change, what twists are going to be made in it. So,
yeah. And I don't do retelling or reimagining either. There's another subgenre that's just mythological fantasy, and that's where I feel like mine falls. The one that I've been working on trying to get out, Starfire Express, pulls, in Kappa, and the fact that they've got to keep their Sada full, and the Tengu, and then it has different other from European and some American monsters in, because she's on a train full of monsters. But there's no plot that aligns with any of those myths. It's just elements of the myths that make an appearance. So it's interesting just to hear the broad range of everything from I'm just going to borrow your character to I'm going to fix this story. But yeah, so you guys have all been super busy writing, reading, reviewing, and everything. What is coming up in 2024 for you? Courtney, you want to start us off this round?
Sure. I, of course, will have the 2 Sleeping Beauty retellings coming out. I have an anthology coming out on January 4th that is called Fate's Design. It's a multi-author anthology by Fiction Atlas Press, and all the proceeds go to Write Love on Our Arms, which is for suicide prevention. And so we're going to be launching that. And then I'm going to take a break and just focus more on writing this year, because I have done a lot of things for other authors, and I have not taken much time for myself in a long time. So I'm going to take some time to really kind of pump out all of my duologies. I have a story in this anthology, Ink and Incantation, that I want to expand upon and make a full-length novel. So I'm going to be working on that. And I'm also going to be in Washington, D.C. in June for the Imaginarium Book Festival, which I'm really excited to attend again. I attended it last year, and it was amazing. They have moved it to the University of Washington, D.C., and it's going to be a huge event. There were so many people on that last year, authors, readers, all kinds of just wonderful people, and it was just a wonderful experience. You can't describe how... I don't know. It just made me feel happy inside. It was like the connections that I made there, and just the whole atmosphere of it is so positive, and I can't wait to go back. So,
yeah, I was jealous. It was quite a lineup, and I was like having some FOMO.
When I tell you some of the people I was on a panel on, because I got to do a lit talk, I was like fangirling. I was so nervous, and they were sitting beside me. I'm like, she's touching me. Oh my God. It's bad when you fangirl for the people that are there. But it was amazing. So.
Yeah. So how about you, madam? What's coming in 2024? You told us a little bit about some of the books, like the ones you're waiting on to come in, but what else is coming for you next year?
Well, in addition to working on I Hate Apples, the third installment of the Butterfly Tales, Curse the Frog Prince Part 3 is coming next year. In addition to a story, I know you mentioned to me you're looking forward to Goblin's Labyrinth. And I will also be having my story, Wedded Bliss, come in next year as well. And as you know, I issued myself a challenge this year to write 3 books. I got close, but Goblin's Labyrinth proved that it wanted to do its own thing and it was going to make me do more work. But in addition to getting that story finally completed, what was I thinking about? Great, you ran out of my head right before I said that. I am looking to increase my book reviews. In addition to something I was going to say, it decided to leave my mind right before I said it, so I'll have to mention it later. I don't know why this escaped my brain right before I could say it.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was going to say, we can take a pause real quick and answer Luna's question. Are there any dragon lovers in this panel that have maybe rewritten a good dragon?
A little bit. I mean, as I can see from the cover, this does have a spin on Chinese dragons. And it plays a very important role, but I always hesitate to get people too excited because it is a small role near the end. Some of the later books in the series, it's going to come in more. So, anybody else?
I have something in the works. So I actually have a Sleeping Beauty retelling that I'll be releasing at the end of next year. So after our Enemies Ever After set. And there is a dragon that's prominent in that, and I can't give too much away without giving away the plot, but it is connected to the main character and is connected to her kingdom in a really unique way that I'm excited to explore.
Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on what draws the authors to particular myths?
I mean, I think if I may, I'll just, everybody's okay with me going first on that one. I know that from the example of my work, Atlantis is probably one of those popular myths out there. And what's always just totally gripped me is that right now, somewhere out there, there's people looking for Atlantis. However, most scientists and most experts would say that it never existed, that it's just this imaginary, made up allegory. But that really is compelling, that this place that for the most part, authorities believe never existed, but yet so many people believe in it. We've had all these retellings and all these movies and books about it, and but the fact that right now people there are actually searching for it, at least the remains or where it possibly existed. I think it just goes to show you that these mythologies, they could really just totally capture the imagination over centuries, right? And name your mythology or your legend or your myth, and I think that there's something about them that we humans are just drawn to and we can't resist, and I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, so and this kind of goes too with the Greek mythologies, but so like the Asian mythos that I'm playing with are about gods and goddesses, and like the Greek gods and goddesses, they are all super powerful, but they're very human in nature. They are flawed. They are selfish. They have desires that they shouldn't act upon, and they can really mess stuff up because they are so powerful. And I guess that's really appealing to me because I love psychology, and I love thinking about why we make the choices and how, depending on what kind of power we have, even in the real world, why those choices can spiral out of control. And so I kind of love playing with what's often a minor character flaw, like in this book, Trials of Fire Rebirth, the main character is very avoidant of stress. He just puts things off when they stress him out, something I do. I think a lot of people do. But he's a god. So when he's not doing his job, there's a cult that starts burning people alive and basically taking over a country. And so that's what kind of pulls me to doing these gods and goddesses, is you can take things that are so pertinent to us in the real world, but really kind of play them out to at a grander scale and make us reflect on ourselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say, a lot of what I draw from is stuff that I've read. Sometimes, there's a specific trope or a specific myth that I've read a lot of that I just love so much and that I want to explore. And other times it's from stuff I've read that I'm like, what if it was done this way? And, I kind of want to explore that too. For instance, I love the arranged marriage trope. And I feel like Hades and Persephone retellings are really big right now because lots of people love that. So I was like, you know what? I kind of want to get in on that action. And it was so much fun to write. And, in the end, like people always say, write what you know. And for me, it's write what you love. And so, I'm an avid reader as well. And so I'm always just devouring the next romantasy book. And so you can consider that research. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder if, I can log that as research or work hours, right? Instead of just enjoyment. So that's kind of where I draw a lot of it from too.
I guess I'll go next. I think I draw a lot of mine just from when I was little. I loved just to read mythology books, all kinds of different from different places: Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Asian mythology. And the thing with fantasy is you can do anything with it. It's anything is possible. And so when anything is possible, there's so many possibilities to think of. There's so many what ifs that I enjoy the psychological aspect of it, of why someone would do something, but I also love the freedom of being able to do anything that my mind can think of. And I just love the way that comes together, and it's more appealing to me to write something with so many what ifs and to fill it in, because I like to investigate things like that. I like learning why people act the way that they do. And I guess that's why I like it. I don't know. And I consume so much media, books, TV shows, all kinds of the thing that got me into things like learning about Avalon and Atlantis and things like that was watching Gargoyles when I was a kid. So stuff like that just got me into it, and I never stopped being a kid. So I just decided to keep doing it.
Okay, my brain finally let me remember what I was going to say.
Yay!
I'm starting a villain romance. Well, not villain romance. It's more vil fantasy romantic thing with the villains as the romantic interest that I'm calling Villains Hard. And that story is going to kick off with somebody who has, the villain in our book, has an island where he lets the rich hunt people. And he unknowingly, his fiance ends up on that island. So you'll be seeing her fight for survival on it while the hunt is going on and he's secretly trying to save her. Meanwhile, she didn't know he did this. So you can imagine how that's going to work with their relationship. But as for mythology, as for mythology, I feel like in a way it kind of just kickstarts a lot of creativity, because those stories can be a little just completely wild. Every time, a lot of the Greek mythology I've read and other mythology with the Norse gods, Asian mythology, even African stories from a long time ago, which go into mythos, all of them, these are just always very wild stories. And it's like, it kind of just opens the mind to possibilities, because it's like, okay, I'm not going to mention this story because it popped in my head, and sorry, I'm thinking of one mythos story as an example, and that's not one I'm going to mention. But it's kind of like when you hear all the stories with Hades and Persephone, and you see what the original story was. And when I learned all the details of the original story, I was like, oh my goodness. And then my brain just got creative, because it's like, oh, but what if it went this way? What if it went that way? What if it went the other way? And it's just in their own way, these old stories just create a lot of inspiration. And I just feel like the Greek myth, well, not just Greek mythos, but mythos in general, it has its own way of just making you feel inspired to expand or flip around the story, because all this crazy stuff happens. And the story I was thinking of that I'm not going to mention is from Egypt. And if you look into Egyptian mythology, just be prepared.
It's crazy stuff.
Yes. Edith, 2024, what you got coming up?
Yeah. So I'm working very hard on this book, which is going to be the 4th in the Immortal Beings series. And I am confident it's going to come out in 24. It has been one of the harder books for me to write. It starts with a character who's a child who has severe obsessed with the perfectionism and an anxiety. And I was trying to explore some of the things I worry about as a parent. I have 2 sons. And it was just like this big emotional toll. But I think I've gotten past the part that was so hard, maybe just because she's grown up. And I'm very excited about it. I am working on the sequel to A Magical Imperative, and people keep messaging me and being like, when is that coming? Because I have a terrible cliffhanger in it. I'm sorry. But I'm not confident it will be out next year. It might be, but just too many things. We'll have to see. But yeah, just writing.
Yeah. Rachel, how about you?
So I've got the 3rd Ivy and Bone book, which is Oak and Ember, and that comes out March 9th. I just finished that up. It's with beta readers now, so I'm really excited to share that. My hope is to have 5 books total with Ivy and Bone. So I'm hoping to release another one towards the end of the year and then come out with the last one in 2025. Then we've got the Enemies Ever After set. That's 10 fairy tales, and that releases from May to July. So we have releases along those dates, and there are 10 of us, and we've just been so excited to share these with the world, and it's been a fabulous project. So I'm eager to read everyone's stories. I've read a few already, and they're fantastic. So it'll be excellent when that comes out. And then I'm kind of using that as a launch pad for my own fairy tale series, which is where the Sleeping Beauty one comes into play. And that one is going to be probably September or October of next year. So after the Enemies Ever After set. And my concept for that one is, what if Sleeping Beauty was the only one left awake? And so I'm really excited to do that one. And I'm hoping to kind of launch my own set of standalone fairy tale retellings, because it's something I've always wanted to do. And with projects and family stuff, I also have kids. I have 3 kids. And so it just hasn't quite come to fruition yet. But this Enemies Ever After set is a great opportunity for me to kind of dip my toes in, get into the world of fairy tale retellings, and get started with my own version of that. And so I'm really excited for all this. I'm hoping for 3 book releases in 2024. That is the plan.
Wow. Busy year.
Yes.
And PL, what's going on with you in the writing world in 2024?
Well, I'm not trying to be all secretive just because of some of the projects. It's just I kind of can't talk about them, but what I can say is what they are. One is going to be co-authoring a book with another writer friend of mine, which I'm really excited about. Hopefully, we'll start that before the end of the year. And then there's also an anthology that I'm hopefully going to be a part of. And I've never written short fiction, so this can be interesting. I'm a pretty verbose, wordy guy, so we'll see if I can keep this within the parameters of what's the short story. And and of course, and the titles, because it's all with art readers and reviews are going out and things like that. I already have reviews published. I'll be working on book 5, which is the title of which is A Pack of Wolves. So book 5 in the Drowned Kingdom saga will be. I'll be working on that. That'll be the big project for the year. That hopefully will be out in spring of 2025, because so far I've stuck to my promise of releasing a book a year. So that's what I've managed to do. So each book has been published in the spring since The Drowned Kingdom was published in 2021. So, but if I can sneak in there, the bulk of my activities really, besides writing, are all reviewing and blogging. And I'm an assistant editor for the wonderful Before We Go blog, led by the incredible Beth Tabler and all the crew. Shout out to all of them. And of course, probably the biggest thing that I do is I do have a YouTube channel, but predominantly what I do there is I'm a co-host of Page Chewing, which is a creative interview feature with my wonderful and talented co-host Taylor from Maybe to the Pages. Check out her channel and subscribe if you haven't. She posts some wonderful content. So yeah, so Page Chewing is we usually do quite a few interviews per year. So, And yeah, hopefully we'll get to have some of you on in the future on the show. So if you're
Yes, and
willing to do
please,
that.
if you don't mind, drop me the link and I'll add it to the description box because I was trying to find your YouTube channel and I couldn't find it. But yeah, I definitely, we've got everybody's main links, the links of their books and everything, but I will also add Madame Crystal Butterfly's YouTube and PL's YouTube. I think I've already got Fiction Atlas, which is Courtney's amazing company. Courtney is one of the most hardworking people I know in helping promote indie books for new authors. She helped me launch the Lord's Gambit series last year, and it was such a relief to not be taken advantage of by a big company and just for a very reasonable price have somebody to help me with the launch parties and stuff in a period where I was very overwhelmed. So thank you again, Courtney, for that. But Courtney does that for other authors too, and definitely worth looking into. And it's not going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, which is nice.
It's wonderful working with you. It's always wonderful working with you.
Oh, well, thank you all so much for joining and talking about your books and what you have going for 2024. It's going to be an exciting year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice meeting you
This
all.
was a lot of fun. Nice meeting everybody.
Yes, nice to
Have a
meet
lot.
you. If you'd like to meet more
Yeah,
indie
nice to meet
authors, you
everybody.
can catch up on the past panels at the playlist on my YouTube channel. Oh, yay. I've got the YouTube link for the chat. I'll drop that in there. And there will be more panels tomorrow and Monday. We have just started. This is day 2 of the Blitz. So if you're looking for more indie authors, you can subscribe. We're going to have mystery. We're going to have sci-fi. We're going to have fantasy all across the board. All right. Anything else before we go? Are we ready to let everybody go live their own story?
Just
The stories never stop.
just a big thank you again, Katherine, to having us all here and all the hard work you do in the indie community. You do fantastic support of all authors. So kudos to you. And I'm sure it's a labor of love, but you must be a bit tired. But because you've been going hard the last few days. But thanks again for all you do to support your fellow authors and the
Yes,
community.
thank you.
It's
Thank
my
you.
pleasure.
This is a
Thank you
marvelous
all.
event.
All right, everybody. Have a good new year.
Happy
Bye.
New Year.